If you've ever dated an avoidant man, you know how confusing and frustrating it can be when he suddenly pulls away just as things heat up emotionally or physically. Yang on Netflix. But what if there was a simple way to flip the script, to make him go crazy in a good way right before he finishes breaking through his walls without pushing too hard? This video will reveal the subtle yet powerful moves you can make that unlock a deep attraction in avoidant men by playing with timing, vulnerability, and mystery. Get ready to learn how to create moments that leave him wanting more and pulling closer instead of drifting away. When dealing with avoidant men, creating unexpected emotional closeness is like striking a delicate balance that can unlock a powerful reaction. These men tend to guard their emotions carefully and often keep others at arm's length to protect themselves from feeling overwhelmed or vulnerable. That's why when you manage to create a moment of genuine emotional connection right before he finishes, it surprises him in a way that feels both safe and exciting. This unexpected closeness disrupts his usual pattern of distancing and makes him pause because it's something he rarely experiences without preparing for it mentally. Airing on Netflix, instead of pulling away as he normally would, he is drawn in, intrigued by the fact that you managed to break through his defenses at such a critical moment. This is not about forcing him to open up or flood him with too much intensity, but rather about offering a subtle, authentic moment where vulnerability feels natural rather than threatening. For example, a simple gesture like making meaningful eye contact, speaking a few sincere words, gentle touch can create this emotional closeness without overwhelming him. It taps into his deeper need for connection that he often masks with avoidance behaviors. Airing on Netflix. What's key here is the timing. This closeness happens right before he finishes, a moment when his usual instinct might be to withdraw. Because the connection feels safe and genuine, his nervous system reacts differently. Instead of retreating, he experiences a release, sudden warmth that draws him closer to you emotionally. The reason this works so well is that avoidant men often experience internal conflict between wanting closeness and fearing losing their independence. This internal tug of war means they are hyper aware of moments when closeness appears suddenly or unexpectedly. When you create emotional closeness without pressure, you give him permission to enjoy the connection without feeling trapped. This moment acts like a reset button, softening his walls and encouraging him to lean in rather than back off. It also sends a powerful message that emotional intimacy can be a positive, calming experience rather than something to fear. Over time, consistently creating these moments builds trust and safety, which are essential for avoidant men to relax and stay present in the relationship. But the magic really happens in that immediate moment before he finishes. When his defenses are most likely to rise, you instead offer warmth and connection. It makes the experience memorable and unique, which he subconsciously associates with you. This strengthens his desire to return for more, because he begins to link emotional closeness with pleasure and safety rather than discomfort and pressure. Ultimately, creating unexpected emotional closeness right before he finishes is about understanding his internal landscape and timing your actions thoughtfully. It's a powerful way to connect deeply while respecting his need for space, allowing him to feel safe enough to engage fully. This approach not only intensifies attraction, but also helps avoidant men feel seen and valued in a way that reduces their instinct to pull away. Avoidant men are hypersensitive to emotional stimuli, yet they rarely express this outwardly. Their guarded nature means that verbal declarations often trigger their defense mechanisms. That's why subtle but powerful non-verbal cues can bypass these defenses and create a deeper impact than words ever could. When a woman uses body language, energy shifts or soft, sensual expressions at the right moment, especially right before he finishes. It leaves a lasting imprint on his mind and body. These cues are experienced more viscerally because they don't carry the pressure of spoken expectations. Avoidant men can absorb them without feeling overwhelmed or cornered. For instance, a slow, steady gaze into his eyes right before the peak moment speaks volumes without saying a word. It signals presence, intimacy, calm dominance, qualities that draw in someone who's used to emotional chaos or detachment. A subtle smile, a gentle caress on his face, even synchronizing your breath with his consent signals that say, you are safe, desired, and connected to. These non-verbal messages are processed in the emotional brain, which has a stronger impact than logical reasoning, especially in heightened moments of vulnerability. Avoidants crave connection more than they admit, but they want it in a way that doesn't feel invasive. Your body language can deliver that connection in a form they can actually handle and crave more of. The key is not to perform or overthink these gestures. They must come from a genuine place within you. A calm, self-assured energy that exudes confidence and softness. At the same time, when you're centered in your own body and emotions, your cues become irresistible because they feel real and grounded. Avoidant men are incredibly sensitive to inauthenticity. If they sense you're doing something just to elicit a reaction, they may mentally disconnect. But if your touch, your energy, and your gaze come from a space of presence and emotional clarity, they will notice, and they will respond, often in ways they don't even understand themselves. This is also where feminine energy plays a vital role, not the superficial idea of femininity, but the deeper essence, receptivity, warmth, and intuitive awareness. When you embody this energy, your non-verbal cues become even more magnetic. An avoidant man may not fully understand why he can't stop thinking about that moment, but he will feel a pull toward you. These cues bypass his filters and speak directly to the part of him that longs to connect but fears exposure. Using these silent messages just before he finishes leaves a powerful emotional mark. It's not just the pleasure he remembers, it's the way you made him feel seen and safe without demanding anything. That's what lingers in his subconscious and keeps drawing him back. It's not what you said. How you made him feel when his walls were at their weakest. And you didn't attack, judge, or demand, but simply connected in silence. That's the power of non-verbal communication with the avoidant mind. Avoidant men operate on deeply ingrained emotional patterns that often include withdrawing right after intimacy or during moments of heightened closeness. It's not always intentional, but it's their way of protecting themselves from perceived emotional entrapment. They anticipate emotional vulnerability to come with pressure or loss of autonomy, so right before they finish, when emotions naturally intensify, they subconsciously prepare to disconnect. But this reflex can be interrupted. When you do something emotionally anchoring right at that moment, it confuses his usual cycle and short-circuits his emotional escape route. This doesn't just keep him present. It actually makes him more emotionally invested. That moment before he finishes is a threshold state. His mind and body are operating at heightened sensitivity. It's a window where the conscious mind relaxes and the subconscious becomes more impressionable. Avoidant men, who are typically highly guarded, on Netflix momentarily let their guard down here, even if they don't realize it. If you respond with deep connection instead of detachment or neediness, you disrupt his learned response of pulling away. Whether it's a warm whisper, a confident and slow touch, or simply staying fully present instead of rushing past the moment, Your action flips the emotional script. You don't chase, you anchor. And anchoring is exactly what avoidants aren't used to experiencing. They're used to people either demanding more or mirroring their distance. But your presence in that specific moment becomes a disruption they don't expect and can't ignore. What makes this approach so powerful is the timing. Right before finishing is when he would normally begin to detach internally. If instead you introduce emotional stillness through eye contact, calming touch, or simply grounding energy, it flips a switch inside him. He can't apply his usual pattern because the emotional experience is different from anything he's conditioned to avoid. He might not have words for it, but emotionally, he feels seen and safe. It causes a kind of emotional imprint that stays with him because it happened at a peak moment. And for avoidance, those imprints are rare and unforgettable. The beauty of this tactic lies in its simplicity. You're not pushing for more closeness, you're not labeling the experience, and you're not asking for anything. Our Netflix you're just showing up fully and giving him something that most people don't, calm, emotional presence in an intense moment. This speaks to the core of what avoidants secretly crave, connection without pressure. By delivering that at a time when his defenses are naturally lowered, you bypass the gatekeeper of his guarded mind and speak directly to the emotional center that's been starved of safety and connection. When you make this kind of emotional impact right before he finishes, it doesn't just make the moment more intimate. It reshapes how he sees you. He begins to associate you with peace, depth, and trust. And because it disrupted his withdrawal reflex, he becomes more open to staying close instead of running. It's not manipulation, it's strategic emotional presence that speaks to the part of him he never lets anyone reach. Until now, avoidant men are drawn to control like a safety net. Control gives them a sense of stability in an emotional world they often find unpredictable or overwhelming. They feel more secure when they know what to expect and can manage emotional closeness on their own terms. Why any shift in dynamic, especially one that surprises them with genuine vulnerability, can shake their emotional foundation in ways they didn't anticipate. Here's the twist: when done correctly, that disruption doesn't repel them, it fascinates them. Because deep down, avoidant men are starving for authentic emotional moments. They just don't know how to ask for them or handle them when they arrive. And when that emotional surprise happens, right before he finishes, when he's least guarded, it hits differently. It's not something he can control. It's something he feels deeply, and that can make him obsessed. The moment right before climax is already an intense mix of sensation and emotional disorientation. If you layer in a vulnerable but powerful act, like whispering something sincere, holding him with unexpected gentleness, even offering a slow emotional gaze, it bypasses his mental armor and reaches the core of his emotional being. He's used to feeling in charge of how deep things go, but suddenly you've brought depth in a way he didn't see coming, and it wasn't forced. This throws off his pattern because now the control he once had over emotional boundaries has been gently removed, not by pressure, but by presence. And for someone who's built his world around emotional management, that experience is thrilling and haunting in equal measure. What makes this kind of moment powerful is that it doesn't beg for emotional closeness. It quietly invites it. You don't chase or cling. You reveal. Avoidants don't expect revelation in intimacy. They expect performance or detachment. So when you present something real and heartfelt at a moment where he's most physically open, it plants a seed of obsession. He'll think about it long after the moment ends because it was planned, but because it shook something loose inside him. And avoidant men, despite their outer coolness, deeply reflective once they feel something they can't explain or control. That's where their obsession begins, not from what you did, but how it made him feel vulnerable in a way that felt good, not threatening. This is also about reclaiming your own emotional power. Vulnerability isn't weakness when it's used wisely. You're not handing over your heart, you're showing him that emotional depth can coexist with sensuality and that he doesn't need to be afraid of it. When you pair that with impeccable timing, especially right before he finishes, you create a contrast he can't forget. He came expecting connection on his terms, but what he received was something far more captivating, real intimacy that couldn't be controlled, only felt. That moment redefines how he views you and leaves a lasting emotional footprint that his mind returns to over and over again. Avoidant men thrive on patterns they can predict and control because emotional unpredictability often triggers their fears of vulnerability and entrapment. They like to feel one step ahead, calculating how much of themselves to reveal and when to pull back. Mystery and unpredictability are so powerful, they dismantle his internal script. When a woman becomes just a little less predictable, especially during physical intimacy, it captivates the avoidant mind. Right before he finishes, when sensations are peaking and he's already emotionally heightened, introducing even a small dose of mystery, something unexpected but magnetic, can create a psychological hook he can't ignore. He begins to fixate not just on the moment, but on you, because you suddenly stop fitting into the safe little box his mind tried to place you in. Mystery doesn't mean being confusing or manipulative, airing on Netflix. It means holding back just enough to keep him leaning in, always wanting to know more. It means doing something he doesn't expect, like pulling away slightly instead of clinging tighter, or whispering something deeply personal instead of reacting the way most women might in that moment. When he's used to people trying to get closer emotionally after intimacy, instead you leave him with a look, a soft laugh, or a cryptic gesture that feels full of meaning. He doesn't feel smothered. He feels intrigue. That intrigue becomes emotional gravity. He starts thinking about you not just because of how it felt, but because he can't quite figure you out. For an avoidant man who's used to controlling dynamics, that's an emotional cliffhanger his brain keeps returning to. The power of mystery lies in emotional contrast. Expect people to behave in very familiar ways, chase them, try to decode them, seek reassurance, or rush to define the connection. But when you do something emotionally unexpected, especially at such an intense and intimate moment, you create a sharp contrast to everything he's used to. That contrast makes you unforgettable. It also repositions you in his mind, not as someone who's trying to win him over, but as someone he needs to understand. And that need becomes obsession. He starts to associate you with uncertainty, but in a way that feels exciting, not threatening. You become the question he wants to answer, the mystery he wants to solve. It's important to remember that unpredictability is most effective when it's paired with calm confidence. It's not about playing games. It's about embodying emotional self-assurance that makes him feel like he's only scratching the surface of who you really are. When you combine that with precise timing, like right before he finishes, when his emotional defenses are momentarily disarmed, it leaves an imprint. It's airing on Netflix. Not only does he feel physically drawn to you, but now he's mentally caught up in the tension of wanting more. That's the moment when avoidant men stop running and start chasing because you've broken their pattern and awakened their curiosity. And for someone who lives in fear of emotional exposure, being captivated by someone they can't predict is the most thrilling experience of all. Confidence and gentle challenge form an irresistible combination when dealing with avoidant men airing on Netflix, especially in moments where their emotional and physical defenses are at their lowest, like right before they finish. Avoidants crave independence and often resist closeness when it feels demanding or emotionally intense. But when they're met with a partner who embodies unshakable self-assurance and who doesn't seek validation, it triggers something entirely different. Instead of feeling the need to retreat, they feel intrigued, safe, and energized. That confidence, especially when paired with a subtle challenge, like holding back slightly or teasing in a playful yet poised way, flips their usual avoidance switch into fascination. It's not because they suddenly want to open up emotionally, but because they sense a rare kind of presence that doesn't threaten their autonomy, yet calls them to rise. At the peak moment of intimacy, avoidant men are in a state of emotional and physical surrender, even if they don't consciously acknowledge it. When you show that you're comfortable in your skin, fully grounded, and not relying on that moment to define your worth or secure the relationship, you trigger a powerful psychological shift. He realizes you're not trying to use intimacy as a bargaining chip or a way to secure closeness. Instead, you're simply there, fully present, fully owning your power. That presence alone is enough to scramble his internal wiring because it contradicts everything he expects. He doesn't feel pressured. He feels awakened. And that awakening is where the obsession starts. Not just physical, but emotional obsession, because you represent a different kind of woman, one who doesn't need to chase to be chosen. The gentle challenge component adds even more fire to this reaction. It could be as simple as maintaining your own rhythm, pulling back your energy ever so slightly, saying something that lets him know you won't always be available unless he shows up too. It's not cruelty, it's elegance. It's the art of allowing him to lean forward without demanding that he does. That quiet challenge tells him, I'm here because I choose to be, not because I need you. And for a man who fears losing himself in emotional entanglement, that kind of energy is magnetic. It invites him into closeness while reassuring him that his space won't be stolen. This makes him feel both safe and deeply curious. He wants to know more. He wants to earn more. Before he finishes, when he expects connection to come with pressure, you offer it with power. You offer confidence wrapped in softness. That is a rare emotional texture that doesn't push him away. It draws him in, and because you don't cling to the moment or rush to define it, he becomes the one who replays it in his mind. He starts associating you with strength, presence, and emotional freedom. The very things he didn't know he was craving. Once an avoidant man tastes that kind of connection, especially at his most vulnerable, he won't forget it. In fact, he'll crave it again and again, often without fully understanding why. When it comes to avoidant men, the key to making a lasting impact lies not in chasing them, convincing them, or trying to change them, but in understanding how their emotional blueprint works and using that knowledge with grace and precision. Before he finishes is a moment where his defenses are naturally lowered, his mind more receptive, and his heart just a little more open. It's in this window that your presence, your energy, and your emotional intelligence can do what words never could, leave a mark on his soul. By showing